Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. For those of you watching our live show tonight, you're actually only seeing the second half of the show. That's because earlier today we got to talk to Orioles prospect Justin Armbruster, who was our co-winner of Orioles Pitcher of the Year in the minor leagues alongside Ryan Watson. Justin gave us a lot of good insight into his season, his approach, and just how good of a teammate Colton Cowser is. So you patrons, anyone who is subscribed to us on Patreon should have that interview now. Everybody else will hear it as part of the main show when that is released later on Monday. So, Nick, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts of our interview with Justin?
He's a down-to-earth guy. I mean, I love getting to talk to him. It's only 20 minutes or so, but love getting to talk to him for a little bit. He definitely lightened up, and the face definitely brightened up a little bit when he was talking about his teammates, which is just awesome. It was awesome to see and hear him talk about his teammates. So, yeah, one of these guys who last year was his first full year in the system, and he ended the year with a pretty dominant year in Double-A. So I'm excited to see where 2023 takes him, but he's definitely a very easy guy to root for, especially after you hear him talk.
Yeah, seems like a good dude, a good teammate. And, I just like getting to know these pitchers in this organization who are so under the radar. And, just an unassuming guy who, if you're talking to him, you wouldn't know that he's someone that's just really coming on and has a chance to really make a name for himself next year with a shot at the 2024 rotation, or at least in the pitching staff for the Orioles at some point. So, yeah, I thought it was an interesting interview, and can't wait to see what he does next year.
So, Bob, I appreciated Justin's modesty when you asked him where he's planning to start next season. I think the three of us know that it should be Norfolk.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, he was really good in Bowie, pitched over 50 innings there, I think. So, yeah, why not? I think him, Drew Rom, it should be a nice AAA starting rotation to begin the year. And then once you're in AAA, you never know. He might make his major league debut sometime in 2023. I wouldn't be shocked.
We'll certainly be pulling for him here. And on tonight's show, we're also going to get into the Rule 5 draft with Vivek Shukla, who will be making an appearance to get into his favorite part of the baseball calendar. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, the wait is over. DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is officially live in Maryland. Now you can legally bet on all your favorite sports with DraftKings anytime and anywhere right here in Maryland. For a limited time, new customers who sign up with promo code On The Verge will receive $200 in free bets instantly. DraftKings has the best features, including same-game parlays, unlimited player props, and more with fast and easy payouts right at your fingertips. DraftKings Sportsbook is where I go for all my sports betting needs. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code On The Verge to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code On The Verge. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 must be 21 or older, physically present in Maryland. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus issued as free bets. See DraftKings.com/MD for full terms and conditions. So tonight's guest is our resident Rule 5 expert here and On The Verge. He's a member of our Patreon community. He is Vivek Shukla. Vivek, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas with the Rule 5 draft, and God forbid anything happens in the next 2 days before any cancellation. I know last year was a nice exercise in getting all the players together, but yes, fingers crossed for 2 more days at least.
2 more days of Rule 5 draft will take place in San Diego as part of the winter meetings. And although the Orioles are kind of in unfamiliar territory, at least in recent history, as they don't pick until the 17th selection. One thing, Vivek, I know that you have talked about with us and that we're going to get into tonight is that this seems to be a pretty deep Rule 5 draft class. So potentially still some value available at the 17th pick.
100%. I think definitely it's a class that has, I feel, at least a combination of players that didn't get protected in the 2018 class, followed by those in the 2019 class, and then few of those J2 signings from 2017, 16, and even 18 that finally came up and made it to the upper level of the minors. So it's a very robust class because every team had to make a decision about, now that our class pool got bigger, well, who can we really protect in this case? So I think pitching wise, personally, it's more heavy, but I think there's some also interesting hitter profiles. And while I'm keeping my fingers crossed as we go through the 17 picks, I actually do feel that every single one of the major league teams could at least benefit by doing a tryout with one of these Rule 5 picks, because at least the reason I'm kind of a proponent of the Rule 5 is I don't mind bringing a player in and trying them out in spring training. And if it doesn't work out, right, at least in that moment, and I know it's only a small sample size, but you can certainly get some metrics on them. They're always measuring and trying to see maybe there's something we can work on from the beginning to the end of spring training. A pitcher, for example, would report early so they could get some data on them. But I think it's a great opportunity that the Orioles have capitalized because, right, if you're measuring all this data, and I can only imagine next year when StatCast is available in all of these minor league parks, how much more data we're going to actually be able to talk about when it comes to, oh, yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, high spin rate. Oh, yeah, great vertical break over here. Or exit velocity over 100. So I can only imagine how it'll continue growing, but I always find it's a nice exercise to learn about players who are on the border but still have value. And I think that's the biggest thing. I'm a believer the Rule 5 does have added value.
Yeah, it's great for these players too to get a chance to make their major league debut. Maybe they're in a tight spot with a deep team that, otherwise they would take them a couple of years to break through, even if they do have success and they can jump right to the front of the line for some, teams on the lower end. Or even, you see a guy like Garrett Whitlock for Boston, or our own Tyler Wells a couple of years ago, just, came in and were pretty much successful right away at the major league level. So it can happen, and we'll see if it does this year.
Sure.
And some of the needs that we are hearing about for the Orioles, left-handed bats, starters, but so there is a possibility that maybe one of those needs, I think particularly the bench or the bullpen, could be helped in the Rule 5 draft. I do want to bring this up, though, and I'll start with Nick on this, which is the Orioles did make a couple of moves recently, claiming Waylon Davis off waivers and then signing Francie Cordero to what is a split contract, but technically right now is being treated as a minor league deal. That, in theory, adds left-handed bat depth that the Orioles would now not have to go that route in the Rule 5 draft. But I'm curious to get your thoughts. Do you think that it makes it more likely the Orioles target a pitcher, or do you think there still could be a bat there with the 17th pick the Orioles have their eye on?
I mean, I don't think signing these two guys is going to block them from doing anything. If you feel like there's someone who can give you more value in the Rule 5 draft, then obviously Diaz is someone who probably isn't too long for the 40-man roster. I don't think he's probably too long for the 40-man roster anyway. We'll see. But in Franchi Cordero, I mean, he was signed for AAA depth. I mean, if he makes it to the big leagues, great. But, I mean, somebody's got to play that outfield in Norfolk. He's not going to take time from Colton Cowser or Hudson Haskin, who most likely starts in AAA. Like, Yusniel Diaz is gone. DJ Stewart's gone. I mean, there's really no one in that Norfolk outfield right now. So you got to have that veteran depth there. So I don't think he blocks anybody. And honestly, I think you can still go hitter because you're probably going to be looking at, if I had to guess, looking at the Orioles, you're probably going to have someone who can play multiple infield positions, can probably play the outfield as well, the super utility type guy. There are a few guys, we'll probably talk about who have some catcher positional versatility that I think might be a little interesting. I don't know. But I'd say odds are the Orioles go pitching. But just because they signed these two left-handed bats, it's not going to stop them from going after more left-handed bats if they think those guys are valuable.
Yeah, I was going to say that'd give us like a 90% chance to go pitcher in the Rule 5 even before these signings. Maybe it went up to 91% after these. But I do like these waiver claims or these signings just because essentially it's just some minor league deals. Franchi Cordero, there's some upside there if he ever figures it out. He's still very young. I didn't realize how fast he was until I looked at his StatCast page recently. And man, for someone with that kind of power to have that top end speed is pretty impressive. Obviously, is not put it together yet. But if you can get him down in AAA, working with these hitting coaches, maybe they unlock something, and that's fine. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad minor league signing. And Lewin Davis is Davis. That's a movie inside Lewin Davis. Lewin Diaz is essentially a minor league waiver claim. I think he has an option left, and he just has to be on the 40-man. Maybe they try to sneak him through at some point. But again, just depth. And if you unlock something, great. If not, no harm done.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm so intrigued by the Orioles hitting program, and I think all of us have been with the emphasis on swing decisions, even the players we're drafting and the focus on finding that right type of balance between contact, but also the quality of contact. And I'm so curious to see, and I'm sure Mike Elias was intrigued by two lefty hitters that have this type of power. Is there any way we can work on improving the swing decisions? Why not put them in our program and see if we can work with them? I'm also very interested with. I know they're not left-handed hitters, but I'm sure Mike Elias had fun with the Daz Cameron claim, where he's still about to turn 26, was a first-round pick, former top 100 prospect. Maybe let's see if there's something we can work with there, and I think it'll be interesting. He was doing well in the Astro system, and then after the trade, it all kind of fell apart. So who knows? Maybe there's something that we can bring back. If the Rule 5 does have that type of hitter, that there's a trait that the Orioles want to optimize, yeah, bring them into our system. I'm actually so impressed with so far how many of our hitters this year, Rutschman, Henderson, Stowers, Vavra, still had respectable seasons in their debut. I mean, obviously the first two are no-brainers, but they just respectable. Yeah.
It's a great point about Cameron. I mean, yeah, again, that's a depth move, but they have experience working with him, and it worked out when they had him. So maybe you can get back on track. But worst case, he's going to provide some pretty good defense for your pitchers in AAA, whether he plays every day or just sparingly. So it can't hurt.
Vivek, I think that this is something you've talked about in our Patreon chat a lot, and in some of the data that you've gathered for us certainly reflects this. I think, as would be expected, a lot of the talent from the Rule 5 draft class this year is going to come from organizations that are stacked. You look at places like Tampa Bay and Cleveland and Los Angeles, who has a player that I want to bring up here in a minute. And you could put together a list of multiple players out of those organizations that are probably going to be taken in the draft. Would you say?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think even as we were looking at some of the players, and maybe specifically on the pitching side, I think the way you see the depth reflective of the Tampa Bay Rays and Cleveland Guardians, who are so easily able to deal pitching because they have that much confidence in bringing it all back and then getting very intriguing prospects. So I think you guys will probably get into a little bit as well, but Cleveland, Tampa, I'll even give a lot of credit also to the Brewers, the Pittsburgh Pirates. There was a lot of interesting reliever types, especially also the Dodgers, where we could definitely all have like a certain trait that if this is what we wanted to focus on, the Orioles could do. Generally, when I'm doing my searches, I think one of the first things I ever mentioned on the podcast last year is I love ground ball rates. I love pitchers who can throw that sinker, throw inside, and be able to generate those ground balls. And especially with our Kyle Gibson just signing, I was just so happy that it's a sinker baller, and you put our defense in, then you got a chance for a double play there most often than not. So ground ball rates, BABIP, Ks per 9 innings. There are high velocity four seam fastballs up in the zone. And then the hardest thing that came by was trying to find spin data on certain players. So maybe I haven't used the tools yet that are readily available to find this information, but Twitter and then doing a few Google searches sometimes does find interesting information. So I echo that same sentiment that there is like certain characteristics that make a relief profile, pitcher profile, or a hitter profile stand out.
Yeah, I think Jorge Mateo might be Kyle Gibson's new best friend, if things go according to this past year.
Yeah, absolutely.
One name I had my eye on in particular, talking about bats for a moment, is Ryan Noda, who spent last season with AAA Oklahoma City in the Dodgers system. Hit 259 with a 395 on base percentage, 474 slugging percentage, 25 homers, and 20 stolen bases. According to Baseball America, 44.8% hard hit rate, and he rates as, quote, one of the better first base defenders in the minor leagues. So you're looking at a guy who maybe the outfield first base type is not necessarily what the Orioles would be looking at typically, but hits the ball hard, grades high as a defender, and a left-handed bat. So, Nick, I know you've tweeted about him over at our account at BSL on the Verge, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on him.
I like Ryan Noda a lot. When I was just doing my initial research on some of these guys, a couple of things, and we can probably talk about more about this interview as we go through, but we were talking about it before we came on. The interview that Mike Snyder, director of pro scouting for the Orioles, did was the Masson Hot Stove show the other day. Like, it's on YouTube, probably on Masson's account. Like, go check that out for sure. And he pretty much tells you what the Orioles are looking for and how they attack this Rule 5 draft. It was an awesome interview. But my biggest takeaway from that, other than it's probably going to be a pitcher who throws really hard and he gets those ground balls, is that they want somebody who's going to be able to make an impact in the major leagues this year. You're not going to get a project guy. So like when I was looking through these guys, there are 50 different names that I think were super intriguing, but like project types, injury concern guys who you're going to have to like stash whatever, that's not going to be a thing the Orioles do. Noda's got considerable upper level experience, 15, 16% walk rates, like in AA and AAA. It's huge. The only thing that I saw, and I feel like a lot of Dodgers fans are like, yeah, he's gone. Somebody's going to take him in the draft this year. One of the biggest knocks, though, I saw was, I think it was Fangraphs, had something about he only hits like 203 on fastballs 93 and up. So that was like one red flag I did see. But I think there are a lot of Ryan Noda fans, from what I gather, doing a little bit of research on him.
Yeah. Vivek, did you have any notes on this guy?
No, exactly. Yeah. No,
Because I got nothing personally.
Oh, no. Okay. I missed the cue there.
No, you're good.
I think Ryan Noda, definitely someone I had also on my list, and I had him on a preliminary list along with, there's a Justin Yurchek as well on the Dodgers system, and these are two first baseman outfielder types that I've always kept in mind because they have really good bat to ball skills and a relatively disciplined eye. Now, I get that Ryan Noda struck out maybe over, I think it was 160, 170 times this year. But I'm also looking at the fact he had 92 walks. That batting average came up, I think, around, what were we just saying with Noda? I think just 259, at least in that case. But I noticed the difference from the 2018 to 19 to 21 and then now 22. There was like an absolute effort in terms of putting in more power. So maybe there was a decision made there from the Dodgers side of, okay, your strikeouts might go up, but we want the quality of contact to be there. And so I think, Nick, you hit it right on the head. There was two like words that I snagged onto when Mike Snyder was talking about the power relievers, for example, that are ready to contribute now. So even taking off all of the projects, that was something that kind of took about 30% of my list away in a way, because, okay, no projects in that way. And then the second one was interesting was I didn't think he'd mention position bats, and maybe he just didn't want to give away anything. But yeah, power positional bats. I think like Ryan Noda is someone, as like Zach was mentioning earlier with the Franchi Cordero, the Lewin Diaz. He's someone I would want competing right with them during this process. Like, you know what? Can Ryan Noda actually contribute as a solid lefty bat off the bench? Not necessarily to platoon with Ryan Mountcastle, but could come up in certain situations. So if there's a moment where he needs to do a pinch hit defensively, I think it's kind of nice to hear positive attributes when it comes to he plays a really good first base, and I feel like we sometimes take that for granted because we're all about positional versatility. But I think that's something that's noteworthy. So 395 on base. I've been probably banging the door on signing Michael Brantley, but I really would wish this year our focus would be on base percentage. So yeah, if he's available at 17 and he played the whole year at AAA, he's knocking on the door. Someone should give him an opportunity.
That's Justin's question there. What do you guys think about picking up Matt Gorski? I was gonna like kind of lump all these Pirates guys. I highlighted 3 Pirates guys, the hitters: Malcolm Nunez, Matt Gorski, and Blake Sable. I just Blake Sable, catcher, outfielder. I know there are a lot of reports don't like the defense, but you talk about on base percentage. I think he had a 363 on base percentage between AA and AAA. Matt Gorski, a 358 on base percentage, and then Malcolm Nunez is the younger guy of this group, probably limited to DH from what I've seen. Again, pretty poor defensive ratings there, but a 367 on base percentage. All 3 of these guys, good power numbers. In Sable and Gorski, well, in Sable's case, some positional flexibility there. Maybe not your backup catcher, but like a de facto third catcher on the roster. Any interest in some of these Pirates hitters?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I guess the way to put it would be, I know the Pirates are also in a similar rebuild, and it's very possible that even this year they could have that Oriole-esque breakout. With that being said, I thought there was a few questionable decisions that they could have protected. Certainly, obviously, the pitching side is one aspect, but Malcolm Nunez, who was kind of like your prized possession in the Jose Quintana trade, and it is very hard for a 2018 J2 signing with a COVID year to make it all the way to AAA. Like, I wouldn't have had him on the list if it was like, okay, he just came up to high A, or maybe just had a brief stint in AA. No, he was doing an excellent job and got all the way to AAA. And especially with a team, right, that's still looking for options, I don't think you would want to risk losing someone like Malcolm Nunez, because I can easily see if Oakland, if Nationals, if any of the other Kansas City Royals, if any team wanted just to insert a DH power bat, maybe occasional third base, try him out, first base, why not give this young 22-year-old a chance? So out of all like the 2018 J2 signings, he's one of the furthest advanced along the way, and 69 walks to 101 strikeouts. That's hard to teach as well. So we're not even talking about a guy who strikes out a lot. So yeah, Nick, I at least with Nunez, that was one that kind of opened my eyes a bit as to like, how did this guy not get protected at least?
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting name to me was wasn't there someone, this whole Astros thing with James Click getting fired, and who's running the show over there to didn't they just acquire a guy at the trade deadline who was in their like top 10 prospects and he's available in the Rule 5 draft? Like, that makes no sense to me.
Exactly. I think Jaden Murray, the pitcher. Yeah.
Yep.
This is one I looked into a lot, like just to like double check my notes. Like, wait a minute, there's no way, because I had him on a preliminary list as, oh, he's so getting protected. And then I had to go back. So what I've read up on him, elite strike thrower, but along with elite strike thrower profile is that there's been improvements in his sinker. The sinker has been up to 95, 96, even touched 97, was doing exceptionally well in AA. I think it's Montgomery Biscuits on the Tampa Bay squad. Then they moved over, had one start in Durham. He had some time to adjust, but he wasn't as successful in the PCL. But we also know about the PCL environment. What I loved most about him was just the command that he has, the sinker, again, generating those ground ball rates, really, really solid slider. And he's also been known as having a high spin guy. He's basically a high spin guy. So I saw one report that was really praising Click, that even though you gave away Chase McDermott and you also gave away Jose Siri, you got back a very intriguing pitcher from the Tampa Bay Rays system. So again, I know the Tampa Bay Rays always have a roster crunch, and that's probably why the rule eligible one got off and left. But oh my God, yeah, if Jaden Murray is there hypothetically at 17, it's interesting because I don't need him to start for the Orioles. He can be a middle reliever and eat up some of those innings. And then should a need come up, then certainly that's something that we would insert in. So for me, Jaden Murray could play that Tyler Wells type of role.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that if you go back to that 2021 Rule 5 draft where they picked up Max Roller and Tyler Wells, so Roller obviously didn't work out, but it was the starter's profile that drew the Orioles' interest. So I could see where Murray fits that bill. Question here from Strictly Goated on YouTube. Who do you think is the best pitcher the Orioles could get?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think maybe to answer this question, I would maybe have to do some elimination of certain players. And let me know if you guys would want me to run through a few names just to see. So at least to kind of top it off, one pitcher, for example, Peyton Battenfield, is someone who was in AAA all year. He has spent time in the Houston org, the Tampa Bay org, the Cleveland org. Literally, you could say the three best pitching development type of organizations. And I was a bit surprised that he wasn't protected. Peyton Battenfield, I know the velocity may not be there to be a top-notch starter. Maybe there's some value in relief. Again, he's also a spin rate, high spin efficiency type of guy, really high vertical arm slot, and I know the Orioles like that. But I think one of the things I absolutely loved was, again, he's in like Fangraphs is someone who has put him on the notice of like he could be a borderline top 100. He's got a starter's profile. So he's someone I feel like would be selected early because right now I think he could provide the Nationals athletics and I'm trying to remember the other team, maybe the Pirates even, a fourth or fifth type of starter look. Jaden Murray we mentioned. Then there's Thad Ward from Boston Red Sox. And this guy just recently on Fangraphs was interviewed. I had Thad Ward on last year's list. Like, I really wanted Thad Ward. And I know he wasn't major league ready yet and was coming back after Tommy John. But this is also probably something we have to think and maybe worry about Kyle Brnovich too. Because he also had his surgery in May and then started pitching again in July. And so Thad Ward was someone I definitely wanted. Had a really good AFL performance, fastball 92, 94. But he's also known for that legendary sweeper. And he himself, Thad Ward, when he was healthy, was the pitcher of the year in the org of the Red Sox. So I don't know why, even after coming back from Tommy John and performing well and then showcasing in the AFL, why they still didn't get protected. So Thad Ward's also, again, a high spin rate type of guy. And then maybe just to round off some of the more notorious names, I've loved Antoine Kelly, even though he walks the world. But I still feel like, man, it's hard to sometimes get a nice lefty with that type of velocity. And I'd love to bring him in for a spring training to see if we can improve his control. This is a similar profile of a 60 grade fastball, 60 grade slider. And that's what CNL Perez was also doing when it came to the number of walks he was giving up. Like, I think it's really hard to replicate those types of lefties with velocity. But Antoine Kelly was definitely someone who, again, traded over to Texas. And Antoine Kelly was someone I was envisioning, for example, in a Trey Mancini trade. If Mancini even went to the Brewers, for example. So a bit surprised he was left off. When I think of notorious names, those are the ones I think about. But in my honest opinion, I think they're going to get taken before the 17th pick. So it's really hard to answer that question of who's the best available pitcher for us by that time. So I would just defer to very interesting relief pitchers, and that's something probably we can get into. But at least those names I had as some of the top pitchers when it came to starters, reliever type of profiles, and at one point they were rated very highly.
Yeah, I like Antoine Kelly a lot. 6'5" lefty, like you mentioned. He had thoracic outlet surgery as well, and he's still throwing 98 miles an hour, which I'm like, that's amazing. I think Eric Longenhagen had a note that says if he could just get 40 grade control, you put him in your bullpen right now and be happy with him. So that's definitely interesting. And with Jaden Murray, back to him real quick. I would love if the pick is Jaden Murray because he's great. I mean, Fangraphs has him as the Astros 8th ranked prospect, but he was part of the Trey Mancini trade. So if we could get Jaden Murray back as part of this, like you're gonna get 3 really good pitching prospects for Trey Mancini. It just makes the trade better. But yeah, those are all good guys. But yeah, I think there are definitely more interesting relief options for sure. Well, what about Justin Jarvis too? I think that's a name that I liked a lot from Milwaukee's organization. Talking about starters.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
150 strikeouts and 141 innings, just 22 years old. I feel like this guy could pitch in the major league bullpen for sure next year and probably be someone who like you develop over the next year or two as a starter even.
100%. And to jump on that, Nick, I'm so happy you brought that up because I would have probably like kicked myself if I forgot Justin Jarvis. This was probably the first name I picked up when was starting the whole process back in July, August, where I was hoping this guy would be unprotected. I think one of the most interesting thing I read, and I give a lot of credit to Tieran, who's a writer on Prospects Live, and he rated his fastball having up to 20 inches of induced vertical break, and that's again something that would be in the 90th, if not 99th percentile of fastballs. It's a really high 60, maybe even 65 grade fastball. It's a foundational fastball, as he puts it. And it gets me thinking, right? Like this high, and again, same thing, high vertical arm slot, which I know is something that the Orioles also like. 4-seam rides really beautifully and then jumps on hitters. And he was one of the best pitchers coming out during Grayson's year. So he was the number 1 pitcher, high school pitcher coming out of North Carolina. He was number 13 rated from Perfect Game. So there's a pedigree there, at least where he, stood when it came to that. And if he was 94, 96 coming in as a starter, I am also intrigued about, okay, let's maybe let him air it out a bit. So Justin Jarvis having that foundational fastball is something that, like, okay, that's a trait that if the Orioles want that type of happy fastball, okay, this is something we should maybe target. And I actually do feel he would be available at 17 because you don't hear too much about him in the industry.
So a friend of the show, Andy Koska, was doing a roundtable recently with Nathan Ruiz over the Baltimore Sun. And Andy name-checked 2 pitchers that I wanted to bring up tonight. One of them is Steven Cruz. And if this sounds familiar, it's because the Orioles clearly have a type for this kind of Minnesota Twins prospect. Cruz is a 6'7", 225-pound right-hander who strikes out a ton of batters, but also issues a lot of walks. In 56 innings with Double-A Wichita last year, he fanned 72 batters while walking 35 in the process. He is Rule 5 eligible this offseason, as is another pitcher that Andy mentioned, Andrew Schultz, a pitcher in the Phillies system, a right-hander who, again, good strikeout numbers, but a lot of walks. He split most of the season between high-A Jersey Shore and Double-A Reading. He was a little bit better, actually, at Reading in some areas. Lower ERA there than he had at high-A Jersey Shore, but got just 14 2/3 innings at Double-A before the season ended. Cruz in particular does sort of fit the mold of other pitchers that we've seen the Orioles target in the past. But I want to bring this up to you guys. Do you see either one of them as viable options? Because on one hand, they're probably going to be available around where the Orioles pick. And is certainly upside. But both right now kind of present as projects that the Orioles, as they try to contend next season, might not want to take on.
Yeah, I mean, Cruz definitely stood out to me. I actually have 4 pitchers here on my Twins list that I don't know these Twins guys. I mean, I don't know where they're producing them from, but it's like Cruz, if you can touch 101, So 101 with a power slider, I think is what Baseball America had in his report. Almost 15 Ks per nine in A ball. Still about 11 and a half Ks per nine in double A. All of these guys are going to have some sort of issue. And with a lot of the pitchers, it seems like walks, the commands, it seems to be that issue. But Steven Cruz definitely stands out when I listen to that Mike Snyder interview of this is a guy you can stick in the bullpen for sure. And even other guys they got like Cody Larson. I think Baseball America say he's got one of the most effective four-seamers in all of minor league baseball last year. A lot of strikeouts there. He doesn't have the velo though. Austin Schufler, 5 pitches, touches 98, a lot of strikeouts, 60% ground ball rate in the minor leagues as well. And then Evan Sisk, a lefty, 76 strikeouts, 63 innings, a funky delivery, low whip, doesn't allow home runs. Those Steven Cruz was a good name drop there by Andy, and I think any one of these Twins pitchers would honestly be kind of interesting.
No, absolutely. I think the Twins are very underrated when it comes to the number of prospects. There was even 2 other pitchers last year that were eligible, and they're still eligible this year. Cody Funderburk, who's a ground ball specialist, Jordan Gore, who's a converted shortstop into a reliever profile. But yeah, Evan Sisk, if anyone's watching right now, I dare you to go just watch his delivery. I know we don't have the loogie anymore, and you have to kind of pitch obviously to three batters per the rules unless you can work it in a way, but there is no left-hander that's going to hit him. It's just I think the batting average against him was .08 this year, and it's a lefty specialist up to, what number did I have here? It was about 50% ground ball rate. Austin Schulfer is also another one who had 50+% ground ball rate. There's a lot of solid ground ball pitchers, at least in the Twins system, and that's also what Yennier Cano was, and that's kind of part of the reason why we also brought him in. So, yeah, at least from the trades and even from the Rule 5, okay, there's clearly a vested interest in the Orioles that they know some of the Twins prospects pretty well, and yeah, any of those relievers could definitely fall under middle relief. I think it's definitely a good draft for, let's find some middle relief prospects that are also valuable.
All right, will we lose Easton Lucas? Let's take a break there. That's good. We can take a break from names. That was a lot of names we're just throwing out there, people. I got some more. I'm sure Vivek has a lot more. But let's talk about the Orioles, guys. And we talked about a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, but do you guys think the Orioles are legitimately in danger of losing anyone on the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft?
I feel like if they lose someone, it's going to be one of those Arizona Fall League arms. So it could be Easton Lucas, especially if you have a team that believes he could be a starter eventually. I also question if he had more innings at Double-A this year, if Nolan Hoffman would be on the 40-man right now. And when you're looking at a guy who has pinpoint command, excellent ground ball rates, that's someone that I could see a team taking a flyer on. Nick Ritzman is more of a long shot because the track record just isn't there up until this year. But he also profiles as the kind of guy that with the right tutelage could be a fast riser next year. So I really, really hope that he sticks. Honestly, I hope all 3 stick. But I really hope in particular that Ritzman sticks because we didn't get to see that much of him during the regular season. But what we saw, there was a clear improvement from the pitcher he was in the Tiger system. So I hope he sticks with the Orioles, and I think it would be a big leap for him to be major league ready, but I also wouldn't be shocked to see a team take a chance on him.
Yeah, I think those 3 bullpen arms have a chance to be picked. I saw Greg Cullen was mentioned in an article, I think it was Baseball America, and I know Vivek agrees with me here, but I worry about Kyle Branovich getting taken just because it seems like he's coming back pretty quickly from his Tommy John surgery, and he definitely has some upside. Zach Peak, a little less worried about just because there's a longer recovery timetable there, but I would hate to lose him too. So I don't think there's anyone in our top 30 because I can't remember if Branovich is in there or just outside of it, but I don't think we're in danger of losing anyone at the upper end, but there's still definitely guys that I would be totally bummed to see selected on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think there's Easton Lucas could certainly get selected, but I could then also argue I think there are other higher profile left-handers that have a better case. Um, and then with Nolan Hoffman, he's someone who's 60+% in ground ball percentage. You could definitely certainly see that a team taking a chance on him, but I think it's also unlikely. And yeah, I'm with you with the Kyle Brnovich. He started throwing before John Means even, and I was kind of surprised by that. So again, the double knuckle curve. I think the way Fangraphs also wrote was like, look, I know there's obviously the concerns about the fastball velocity. Will it miss enough bats? Is he mixing in the changeup and the knuckle curve enough? But I also feel like he's someone who fits into not exactly Peyton Battenfield, but he could give you 4 or 5 innings. Like, all right, if you need a back end starter, for example, and that's what I hope. I hope Kyle Brnovich does stay. If he was still in the organization, I would have said Brendan Hannafy, who I know is also a favorite, and I again wish him the best. I know he's one of the last few remaining from the Duquette regime, but if he was still in the org, I would have said Brendan Hannafy. Maybe we will rule 5 him, but I digress. I think I think relatively though the Orioles have made the right decisions for the protections. A quick name to shout out would also be Cole Uvila. He seems to be a data darling who had only one bad month. I think it was in June, and everything else was like sub 3 ERA, high K per 9 inning. So he had AAA time this year, and I think it was Driveline that also likes him. Maybe it was Kyle Bodie who once wrote during that Rule 5 last year. The Orioles certainly have a certain type, and any model would be happy to have a Cole Vila in their system. So I think if anything, yeah, I don't see any hitters being taken from our angle. But pitchers, I'm also doubtful given the level of immense number of pitching that's in this draft.
Well, now that you mentioned Brendan Hannafy, I'm going to go drink some more after the show. But it's yeah, I'm just going to repeat what I said last week or the week before, that I'm not concerned. Branovich a little bit, but I'm not really concerned about losing anybody else, or at least if they get drafted, sticking with their team. So I'd imagine maybe you take a flyer on one of those relievers that y'all were talking about, and they end up getting returned. But I'm more concerned. And if I knew the rosters and we could do a full episode about this, I would. And I know Vivek would as well. A minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft preview for the extreme diehards out there. But like, I don't even think like procedurally they're like, so-and-so has been promoted to AAA, because you have to be protected on the AAA roster to not get selected in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. So that would be the area of concern, which I also believe that happens right after the major league phase. So I'm concerned there. I'm looking for guys, a lot of those guys like Aberdeen, would they get picked? Or even, I was looking at the list again real quick, Michel Deson, like, would they move him up? Is there going to be enough space? I don't know how much space there is to protect guys. Could he be someone that the Orioles lose in the minor league phase of this thing? I don't know. But yeah, major league phase, I'm not too concerned.
No,
Yeah,
good point. Yeah.
especially because I'm not sure of the rules of like, can they just be on the AAA roster for a temporary, and then open the season back in Delmarva? Like, I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I'd love to dive into it one day.
Yeah. I think of the, I guess, Ignacio Feliz situation, right? Because like Padres got him, I think, in a trade, or was like a minor league signing, but Ignacio Feliz technically hadn't pitched even at A ball yet. So we started him in Delmarva, got him up to Aberdeen, and so forth. So yeah, those would technically be eligible. So I guess I hate to say it, but I do believe those guys, Michelle and the fellow of other J2 class members from those trades would be eligible. So Yeah, I do hope we get our hands on what that AAA roster ends up being, so that we can then be like, okay, who are we at risk of losing? Um, I'm with you, Nick. I think that's where we could take some damage in the minor league
Yeah.
phase.
I
And
think
hopefully pick up some interesting prospects as well.
Yeah, pitchers too. There's so many pitchers. Your Xavier Moore, like your Jake Perzina. Spoiler: Jake Perzina gets some more love on tonight's episode. In the first part, yeah, your Cade Strouds. John Mioli was ready to the John Mioli hype on Cade Stroud. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun part to watch. I'm just excited for Wednesday. I want to see who gets picked and who the Orioles take in both phases.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing to note right now, we were trying to figure out before the show, the Orioles, once the signing of Kyle Gibson becomes official, I believe that's going to put their 40-man roster at 39 players. So they should have at least one spot open when the draft rolls around on Wednesday, provided that there aren't other moves. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring this back to what the Orioles might pick and go around to the three of you, starting with Bob. Number one, will the Orioles make a selection? And then number two, what kind of player are they going to take? Is it going to be a position player, a reliever, a potential starter? And if you can name a specific player as an added bonus, that would be great.
I think I might be the wrong guy for that, but I do think they will take someone because, what's the worst that happens? You bring them into spring training, doesn't work out, you send them back, and you lose half of the money it costs you to select them in the process. I do think it will be a pitcher. I mean, I'd love to get a guy like Jaden Murray, who's like, a legitimate prospect, or, some of these other, I love a bunch of these guys that you guys are talking about, but most likely it will probably be, since we have the 17th pick, that it will be like a guy that they're hoping can be a decent relief prospect. And that would be cool too. So yeah, I do think they'll take someone and it'll be a pitcher. I'll say Jaden Murray just because that's the one I want, but
nope, it's going to be a hitter. And it's going to be either Griffin Conine or Victor Mesa. That's what it's got to be. Sorry, Orioles fans.
Redemption.
I was going through this list, the Fangraphs list, and be like, oh, these names. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely going to be a pitcher, and it's going to be one of the relievers. And I don't know if Vivek wants to talk about some of his ground ball monsters. The name I'm going after, it's my guy. Let me find everything else here so I can pull up all the numbers. It's going to be Kevin Kelly, and it better be Kevin Kelly. Orioles, somebody from the front office, we know you listen. Put this into the right person's ears. Kevin Kelly from the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians actually have a bunch of guys who they don't throw hard. It's like upper 80s, barely 91 miles an hour, funky deliveries, but they get the job done at the highest levels in the minor leagues. It's unbelievable what Cleveland can do with their pitching development. But Kevin Kelly, a JMU guy, 2.04 ERA between AA and AAA, 1.12 WHIP, sub 200 batting average against, allowed just one home run all season, 56% ground ball rate in AA, and a 62% ground ball rate in AAA. The guy, he doesn't throw extremely hard, but I remember, and I can't speak specifically to what Cleveland's done with him, but I know when he was in college, his final year at college, he was throwing from like 4 different arm angles and could do it in the same at bat. And it didn't matter which arm angle he was using. He had the release point down perfect at each arm angle. He was throwing like 7, 8 different pitches. He's like Yu Darvish over there, just creating pitches out of thin air. I mean, the kid is one of the brightest kids I've ever talked to baseball with. I mean, Kevin Kelly is a guy who gets overlooked and you probably heard nothing about, but he's had tremendous success in the upper levels of the minor leagues. He's a ground ball machine, and he's got a good teammate, Shelton Perkins, already here in the organization. So I know the Orioles have seen him pitch plenty of times. So he's battled Kyle Branovich. He's battled Griffin McClarty on Friday nights in the CAA. Make it happen, Baltimore.
No, absolutely. I think, again, Kevin Kelly, a great pick. And really a credit goes to, I listed out 4 Cleveland Guardian relievers in that list. Man, again, that speaks to Guardians' depth. Like, all 4 of them had enough seasoning at AAA that would have merited protection on any other team. So I think at least one of those relievers gets picked. If possible, I wanted to list two guys that we haven't mentioned yet, even though I'm a Justice Jarvis a huge fan and would be thrilled to have him. The first one I'm going to start off with, and it was someone I learned late of in the process, was Justin Yeager. And Justin Yeager, again, a 2019, let me pull up my list. Again, a 2019 33rd round pick, 3.10 ERA, 3.85 FIP. I love 81 strikeouts and 52.1 innings. He spent the year in high A and double A. So you might feel like he might be a little bit far away. I love the fact that he got some training in the offseason, a great weight training program. I forget the name where he went to, but the fastballs between 96 and 99, sliders between 88 and 91. 88, 89, or 91, the splitter, and then an 86 to 89 slider. So he's been throwing very heavily. If you watch the videos on Justin Yeager, again, high electric fastball. Like, it's such a quick arm action that it just explodes on you. So this four-seamer, he's not a traditional ground ball pitcher in that sense, but the fastball just explodes in that way. And he's very under the radar. I haven't seen anyone talk about him, but I'm gonna throw out a bone here. I think Justin Yeager is someone that could definitely be there, and this is especially considering the two popular names you guys get with the Braves are Indigo Diaz and Victor Vodnik. So I know those two are on everyone's like profiles, but Justin Yeager is one. The second one I would go with is Jose Lopez. And this is someone that through the process of just a few Twitter searches, I later found out is he did the traditional, last year Felix Bautista pitched at 3 levels and then got protected. He also did a similar high A, double A, triple A type of ascent. And Jose Lopez is a lefty, 94 to 96, sometimes tops at 97 from the left side. He was a 2016 J2 signing. Again, 2.43 RA, 2.77 FIP, and then wait for it, 95 strikeouts in 59 innings. So a huge K per 9 inning. That's 13, 14 Ks per 9 inning. He only pitched 2 innings at AAA, but I feel like there was a plan to get this guy protected, but it just didn't work out. And if you do watch him pitch, he reminds me a lot of Jose Alvarado, who you saw with the Phillies, but later again was traded over from the Tampa Bay Rays. So once again, Cleveland and Tampa, they do a great job when they're pitching development as always, and I do commend them for that. I think Justin Yeager and Jose Lopez really fall under that. Okay, power, high octane, K per 9 inning. You're not going to touch my stuff. So there's a lot more that I obviously could name off, but I think those two definitely stick out for me. And I also have to realistically think who's available at 17.
Yeah, that's the hard thing for me is that there are so many pitchers, and I think it will be a pitcher, and there are so many pitchers that I like in this class, but I can't quite figure out who it's going to be. Two names that I'm going to throw out. I do think Steven Cruz is a legitimate option, just for some of the reasons we talked about. The stuff is there, and although the Orioles don't want to take on a project, I wonder if they feel like they could work with him in a way that they worked with Felix Bautista last year, and possibly with a better bullpen and hopefully a better starting rotation, ease him in with low leverage situations. That's a move that could pay off. And another guy I've got my eye on is Matt Ruppenthal, who was an Astros prospect originally drafted by Mike Elias out of Vanderbilt. You look at the numbers, and at first glance last year, nothing particularly special jumps out, but this is a pretty good arm who looked good at Corpus Christi for most of last season, struggled at AAA, but he also pitched in the Arizona Fall League and looks good out there. So here's someone, and I'm not saying it just because this regime is familiar with him, but I do think there's an added advantage there of they have the background on him. Maybe they feel like they could bring him in and work with him. So those are two names that I would not be shocked to see the Orioles take.
And they took Brandon Bailey, right, in what was 2020. So there is precedent.
It was Houston too. They had a couple interesting guys. I think we talked about Jaden Murray, obviously, but they had some interesting catchers. Again, I don't know if the Orioles go catcher, but and some outfielders. You got Marty Costas. Maxwell Costas is in the organization. I've seen some interesting tidbits on Marty Costas. I don't know if you know more, Vivek, but yeah, I'd be curious if these Astros guys get a little bump up in the rankings when the Orioles are preparing for this.
Oh, definite. I give a shout out to again Chris Resitara. You guys have seen also on Twitter. He and Luke Seiler are the two that again inspire me to do this Rule 5 penance in a way you can call it. But yeah, Marty Costas was someone that was also on Chris's list last year, and I never really understood why until also Jeff Pontus wrote an article at Baseball America about he has some of the best exit velocity numbers. It's just he doesn't hit a lot of home runs. So it's one of those cases where, okay, can you tap into that launch angle a bit? Is there anything swing change-wise mechanically you can do to maybe tap into more power? But regardless, right, it's kind of like that Ramon Urias situation where he improved the launch angle, but Ramon always knew how to hit the ball hard. So, again, Marty Costas. Corey Julks is another name that keeps popping up. And I'm a bit iffy on it because I'm always, and I probably shouldn't forget him as well, but there was a lot of really good PCL hitter performances. And this is sometimes the hardest thing to differentiate because we always hear about the home run friendly environments and then to not worry about pitchers who have a 6+ ERA, but it's also kind of like not easy to not look at that by any means. But Corey Julks had a breakout year, and I think it was, again, a product of mechanical changes. He was a 2017 draft pick, so he's been Rule 5 eligible twice now. So this would be his third time. It's probably unlikely he gets protected, but there was a considerable power improvement in 2021 and then really in 2022. So, again, if any team needed just a corner outfield bet, Corey Julks is another in the Houston Astros system.
Yeah, there's an interesting note. Another old friend is Rule 5 eligible in Mason McCoy, and you're talking about PCL and hitters and trying to God. Since we don't have like that a lot of that underlying data, it's so difficult to like, all right, you play in the PCL, how much of this is real, how much is wind aid, like the environment aided. Mason McCoy hit 21 home runs last year in the Mariners AAA system. Yeah. So it's like
he was a 2020 20 steals, 20 home runs, and I lost it.
But yeah, it's definitely makes it more difficult to judge some of these West Coast guys.
Anything's possible.
Anything is possible. Yeah.
So before we wrap up tonight, we should note the big news out of Birdland this week, at least so far, and that's the signing of Kyle Gibson, who agreed to a 1-year deal, and he'll presumably fill that Jordan Lyles role next year, a veteran who's going to eat innings and hopefully not be the only upgrade that the Orioles make their rotation this offseason. The baseline stats for Gibson last year were not spectacular, in particular an ERA just north of 5. However, he did that while pitching in front of one of the worst defenses in the major leagues with the Phillies, and also pitching in what is a proven hitter's park, Citizens Bank Park. So the Orioles certainly hoping that underlying data showing that in a better environment, Gibson would have had a typical Kyle Gibson season, which is, good walk rate, gets a good number of ground balls, and an ERA somewhere in the mid-3s is what they get from him next year. Bob, I'll start with you. We don't know the financial terms yet, I believe, and the news has not been officially announced by the Orioles, but what are your thoughts on the Gibson signing?
Let's see. I think actually while we were recording, it was announced it was 1 year, $10 million. So pretty much right what I would have expected. I would have said between 8 and 10 million. So in the upper end of that, you see the pitching market's pretty healthy right now. So makes sense to me. But At first I was underwhelmed. He was not one of the guys that I was hoping for that, second starting pitcher that hopefully the Orioles are going to sign to of this offseason. But looking into it more, it makes perfect sense to me. They declined Jordan Lyle's option at 11 million and signed Kyle Gibson for 10, and he's just, to me, he's a clear step above Lyles. He's basically Lyles on steroids. If you look at his baseball savant page, they're very similar in just like what they do well, what they don't do as well. But Gibson's sliders are a little bit more to the right than Lyles, so meaning he's a little bit better at pretty much everything, and he's a ground ball pitcher. So Lyles is a fly ball pitcher. You turn him into a ground ball pitcher, someone that misses bats a little bit more, and you get him with Chris Holt and company and see what they can do with him. And not to mention that new left field that hopefully keeps some of those home runs in compared to Philadelphia. And I thought our old buddy, friend of the show, Connor Newcomb, had the best take I've seen so far on this, just on his Locked On Orioles Twitter feed and podcast, saying just, get him out of Philly between that infield defense and outfield defense, get him here, get him with the new wall, get him with Chris Holt, and see if he can pitch around a 4 ERA. And if he can do that for 160 to 180 innings, I mean, that's pretty valuable as a back end of the rotation starter. And it just provides depth. Yeah, we have a lot of guys that could be as good as him, but they're young. They're still developing. You don't know. They could take a step back, could get hurt. So it never hurts to have depth, especially quality veteran depth at that. And I still think they're going to go out and get someone even better. So do not freak out, Birdland.
Yeah, I think we missed Mike Elias's entire conversation while we've been recording. I've been trying to keep up on Twitter while also keep track of this, but he said a lot. I think they've already met with 8 pitchers. They've got multi-year offers out on pitchers, apparently. I mean, we're gonna have to go back and read through all of this when we get done with this tonight, but it sounds promising. The Gibson sign is fine for me. I mean, you look at some of the other numbers too, like he has a 5 ERA, but the expected ERA, the FIP, the XFIP was below 4, his lowest in 3 or 4 years or something like that. So yeah, playing into the defense situation and the wall. But I liked the quote, was that Ken Rosenthal? I think somebody posted that I saw the screenshots from it. I don't subscribe to The Athletic, but Gibson had similar offers. Was that right? From other teams, and he chose the Orioles, and he listed some of the reasons why. To me, I get you want better quality starting pitchers right now when the rumors are Syndergaard and Gibson is the guys, that's not super exciting. But for a guy like Gibson to say, I chose the Orioles purposely over other organizations for reasons A, B, and C, that's exciting. And that's going to open up the door for more guys, higher quality guys, I think, to come this way. So
I'll jump in here real quick before we go to Vivek. Dan Connolly reported that Gibson had an identical offer, 1 year, $10 million from the Blue Jays as well, and chose the Orioles over Toronto.
There you go.
The Pirates, I believe, had an identical offer as well. And, just seems like a great guy as well. Seems like a good clubhouse presence. He does stuff for charities. I'm sure a lot of players do that we don't hear about, but I think I've even heard Cespedes Barbecue guys have a relationship with him of some kind and heard good things about him. So yeah, I'm sure, it's the Orioles. They seem really, clubhouse chemistry is almost as important to them as play on the field. So yeah, I think it probably was just the right fit at the right price. And it's so cool that he wants to pitch to Adley more than he wants to pitch to Gabriel Moreno and the other Blue Jays catcher who had a good year last year that I can't remember his name.
Alejandro Kirk.
Yeah.
And even Jansen. Yeah, they got some.
Yes, Jansen, Rui, they got some catchers over there.
Yeah. I think at least the first thing about this is I think generally quality starts or pitchers that, again, I know are that many looking at the numbers, if you look at ERA, then it doesn't really give you the full perspective on Gibson. And I think one thing the Orioles did well, and maybe it was also an influence of the wall, was strike throwing, for example. If you look at all of those heat maps, or not heat maps rather, but if you go to Savant, you'll see an improved strike throwing rate from Kramer, from Bradish, from Watkins, from Lyles, from Wells. These are all elite strike throwers, right? So the Orioles clearly have a type when it comes to finding the free agent. And yes, Gibson himself is also a strike thrower. There was also the fact that he wasn't getting hit as hard. And again, him being a sinker baller, We also saw Kramer and Bradish mixing in more of that sinker as well into their pitch repertoire. So I know they coined Jordan Lyles to be dad. Gibson might be dad 2.0, for example. But I am with you in the sense that, yes, the pitching market is definitely high right now when it comes to the price. And you could also maybe argue the fact that, well, you had Jordan Lyles. Also, you did a 1 million buyout or for 11 million, or did you want to do 10 million for Gibson? And I also do believe that Gibson does have the higher upside, because I remember when he 9 inning shutout us against, it was John Means against Gibbons back in Texas last year in 2021, and the Orioles couldn't put up a single run against Kyle Gibson. So he's definitely got this profile that got him to an all-star season. And I think for the Orioles to hand that contract out, they firmly do believe like this is adding more data to their wall. Like, look what we did with Jordan Lyles. What do you think we're going to do with Kyle Gibson? And again, if it also pays off, then this becomes even more of a destination in that, right? 1 year ago, Michael Eyes literally listed down the reasons of why this wall and was taking a look at. And those 3 reasons that Ken Rosenthal just brought up, it worked, at least in this sense. And yeah, I think, I don't know how the free agency is going to go. Maybe the Orioles themselves will have to give up 20 plus million a year for some of these other starters if Rodon isn't the person that does come over. But I think there's also value in eating innings. And for a team in 2021 that never ate innings and no one could get past the 4th inning, what Lyles did was also amazing. And Gibson still provides that value. It's building in the whole redundancy. You can't solely rely on Kramer, Bradish to repeat without any regression. So, yeah, smart move, I think. Yeah.
Can we, all this
Completely
talk
agree.
about the wall, I just think I'm scared for all the right-handed hitters. Like, we're we're gonna talk to a power hitting prospect here soon. He may not be the best to answer this question because I feel like you could put the wall at 600 feet. And he say I'm gonna hit it over with ease. But like, what do these right-handed hitting prospects? Are they just like, trade me? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. The way we talk up this wall for pitching is exciting. It's awesome. But I would love to hear some of these younger guys, right-handed hitters in the system. Your Connor Norbies. I'd love to hear their thoughts about all this. Like, what are they thinking as the front office is talking about this? But just
Right center field ain't so bad.
Maybe we saw Connor Norby do all that down there.
Yeah.
Well, Vivek, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. So tell our listeners where they can find some of your work and some of your research, other than our Patreon group, which they could join by becoming patrons for as little as $3 a month. So something to consider as we approach the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me again on Twitter. I just Shukla is my Twitter handle, at least in that sense. And I think once again, I'll probably be posting either not tonight, maybe tonight or tomorrow, just my personal final list of the Rule 5 draft. If anyone missed it by any chance, I think it's a great exercise in learning about different players once again that may be on the border, but are also valuable in a way to another team. Like, just because you're not protected on a 40-man roster doesn't mean you also like you don't have value. And it's been a combination of many searches on Fangraphs, so I really do give a lot of credit to Fangraphs for having a database where I can search ground ball rates, I can search BABIP, I can search for Ks per 9 innings, I can search at high A, double A, triple A, and then even Twitter, because there's so many different videos that are brought out there, and that's the only way I'm able to even talk about this guy has a high vertical arm slot, or Kevin Kelly has a bit of a funky, deceptive delivery that gives a different illusion. So this whole Rule 5 process helps me learn as I'm very fascinated with this sport in general. But I also think it's something that the Orioles have absolutely done a great job of over these years, of finding value in players that not necessarily were seen that way.
Yeah. See, listen to this guy. if you're listening to this, you can be part of the WhatsApp group and get this knowledge on a daily basis. He pays us. We should be paying him Dan Clark style to give us this
No.
information today. So good stuff.
Oh
And
God, Dan Clark.
I meant to say this during the DraftKings read. So patrons, you didn't hear the DraftKings ad, but I did use some of that free money that I got for just living in Maryland. Placed a free $50 bet on Jacob deGrom to sign with the Rangers at plus $2,500 odds. Boom, hit it. I can't get paid out until he throws a pitch for them, so it could be a couple years, knowing his injury history. But it's money in the bank, and it was a free bet. So thank you, DraftKings.
That was my prediction. I should have placed that bet as well.
Hey, I'll give you $50.
No. Oh, good win. Good win.
Yeah, I can tell from the look on Nick's face that he really wishes he had placed that bet right now. Next week, we will be joined by Kobe Mayo. One of the top prospects in the Orioles farm system is going to be on to talk about his 2022 season and the things he's working on to get ready for 2023, which we all feel like is going to be a pretty big year for him. So you're going to want to check out that interview. That'll be next Monday night. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge for all the latest coverage on the Orioles, including the Rule 5 draft. And check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com. I will have a recap up there after the Rule 5 draft takes place, noting who the Orioles gain and who they possibly lose. And while you're there, you can check that out as well as more Orioles coverage, Ravens coverage, college sports, and more. And hop on the message board to join in discussion with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors. Thank you to Justin Armbruster and Vivek Shukla for joining us on tonight's episode. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden, and you've been listening to On the Verge.